My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, and the night my husband lied to me about working late was the night I realized something far worse than betrayal. I had been living with a man who thought I would never look closely enough to see the truth. It was a Wednesday, 6:47 p.m. My phone lit up with a message from him. "Working late tonight, don't wait up." That was it. No explanation, no details, no warmth. Just a sentence that felt empty, cold, like something you'd send a roommate. "Not your wife of 9 years." I stared at the message longer than I should have, because something about it didn't feel right. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. For 9 years, Daniel had always complained in advance about overtime. He'd sigh about meetings, rant about deadlines, warn me days ahead if plans needed to change. But this felt rehearsed, detached. And we had plans. We always had plans on Wednesdays. Thai food. Same restaurant, same couch, same show. It wasn't just routine, it was ours. Something we built over years of being together. Something that made life feel stable, predictable, safe. And just like that, it didn't matter to him anymore. I typed back slowly. "Hope you and Rachel from IT have a productive evening." Rachel, the name he had been saying over and over for the past month. Rachel fixed the system. Rachel has the funniest stories. Rachel thinks we should restructure the database. Always Rachel. Too much Rachel. The reply came almost instantly. 3 typing bubbles. Disappear. Reappear. Then, his call. "Hey, babe." His voice was higher than usual. Tight. "Careful. Why did you mention Rachel?" I leaned back against the kitchen counter, my fingers resting lightly on the marble surface. "Just figured she'd be at your work thing," I said calmly. "You talk about her a lot." Silence. Then a forced laugh. "Oh, well, maybe. It's a big event, lots of departments." That was the moment something inside me shifted. Because yesterday, he told me Rachel was leading a special project for his team. Tonight. But suddenly, he didn't even know if she'd be there. "Right," I said softly. "Makes sense." I ended the call shortly after. Then I opened my laptop and checked his location, because we had always shared it, because we had nothing to hide. At least, that's what I used to believe. His phone wasn't at the office. It wasn't at any corporate building. It was across town, at a place I recognized immediately, Rosario's, an upscale Italian restaurant, candlelight tables, wine lists, soft music, the kind of place people went to celebrate anniversaries or fall in love, not attend security meetings. I stared at the blinking dot on the map. 9 years of marriage, and he was sitting across from another woman, lying to me without hesitation. And the strangest part, I didn't feel rage. Not yet. What I felt was clarity. Every late night, every vague answer, every whisper in the bathroom, every time he said her name, it all snapped into place, like a puzzle finally completed. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a phase. This was something deliberate, something repeated, something real. So I sent one more message. "Hope you and Rachel enjoy the presentation." And then I watched. Because patience doesn't just reveal the truth, it exposes it within seconds. His location started moving fast. Too fast for someone calmly leaving a work event. He was running. 17 minutes later, I heard the key at the door shaking, scraping against the lock over and over, like guilt had weight. "Emily?" he called out, voice unsteady. "I'm home early. The event got canceled." I didn't move, didn't react, didn't rush. I simply walked into the kitchen and looked at my husband, the man I had trusted for nearly a decade, standing there, smelling like garlic, with a faint stain of marinara sauce on his shirt, trying to convince me he had just come from a meeting. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. He didn't think I would notice. He didn't think I would question him. He didn't think I would fight back. And that was his biggest mistake. If you had asked me 1 month before that Wednesday night, I would have told you I had a good marriage, not a perfect one. I'm old enough to know perfect doesn't exist, but I would have called it solid. Reliable. The kind of marriage people assume is safe because it has history behind it. 9 years together. 7 years married. A house with familiar creaks in the floorboards. Shared passwords, shared bills, shared routines, shared grocery lists stuck to the refrigerator with cheap magnets from vacations we used to laugh about. From the outside, Daniel and I looked stable, and for a long time I believed we were. I work in corporate risk management for a tech firm in the city. My job is built on pattern recognition, policy gaps, quiet inconsistencies, the little details people ignore until those details become expensive disasters. I've always been practical, calm under pressure, the kind of woman who double-checks documents, reads the fine print, remembers dates, notices shifts in tone. Daniel used to say that was one of the things he loved about me. "You make life feel organized," he told me once, years ago, smiling as I color-coded our moving boxes in the first apartment we rented together. "If I ever fall apart, you'll probably label the pieces and put me back in order." At the time, I laughed. I thought it was sweet. Now, looking back, I wonder if he liked being loved by a woman who made everything easier for him. We met when I was 23 and he was 25. It was at a mutual friend's rooftop birthday party downtown. I almost didn't go because I had an early meeting the next morning, but my friend insisted, and Daniel was there in a navy button-down with his sleeves rolled up, talking to 3 people at once like he had known them all his life. He had that kind of energy back then. Warm, easy, socially fluent. He made people feel included, seen. He noticed when my drink was empty before I did. "You look like someone who regrets coming already," he said, smiling as he handed me another glass. "I regret losing sleep," I replied. "Then I'll try to be interesting enough to make it worth it." And somehow, he was. We talked for almost 2 hours about work. About terrible bosses, about the difference between liking your life and merely managing it. He told me he worked in operations at a mid-sized technology company. I told him I was still trying to prove myself in an industry where half the room assumed the youngest woman at the table was there to take notes. He liked that I was direct. I liked that he seemed to listen. That mattered to me. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't the loudest man in the room. But in those early months, he made me feel chosen in a quiet, steady way. He remembered the small things, the way I took my coffee, the fact that I hated crowded restaurants, the name of my college roommate, the book I mentioned wanting to read but never bought because work had been overwhelming that week. He paid attention, or at least he did then. When we got engaged, it felt natural, adult, earned. There was no chaos to it. No reckless drama, just certainty. A sense that this was the man I would build a life with. The proposal was simple, during a weekend trip to the coast just before sunset. He was nervous enough that his hands trembled a little when he opened the box. "I know I'm not the most poetic man alive," he said, "but I know I want every version of my future to have you in it." And I believed him. God, I believed him. Marriage didn't change us overnight. It wasn't one of those stories where everything goes wrong the second the rings are on. For a while, it was good, comfortable. We built habits. Wednesday dinners, Sunday errands, Friday movie nights at home when we were too tired to pretend we were still the kind of couple who wanted noisy bars and overpriced cocktails. He would bring me coffee on difficult mornings. I would remind him about deadlines, prescriptions, dentist appointments, the practical architecture of a shared adult life. I handled most of the finances because I was better at it. Not because he was irresponsible, but because numbers exhausted him and never intimidated me. We split our household responsibilities in a way that felt fair. He liked cooking more than I did. I liked structure more than he did. It balanced, or I thought it did. The first changes were so small, they barely qualified as warnings. That's the dangerous thing about betrayal. It rarely arrives looking dramatic at first. It arrives in tiny adjustments. A phone turned face down on the table. A delayed answer to a simple question. A little less eye contact. A little more distance in bed. A little more irritation where patience used to live. At first, I explained everything away. He's stressed. He's tired. He's distracted. He's going through a phase. You're overthinking. Because when you love someone, you don't immediately leap to the ugliest conclusion. You protect the version of them that makes your world feel safe, even when that version is quietly disappearing. About 6 weeks before that Wednesday, Daniel started mentioning Rachel. At first, it sounded harmless. A coworker. Younger than him, I guessed from the way he described her energy. Smart, funny, helpful on a systems transition project his department had been struggling with for months. Rachel actually knows what she's doing, he said one night while chopping cilantro in the kitchen. Half this building would collapse without her. Another night. Rachel said the whole process is outdated. She's probably right. Then, you'd actually like Rachel. She's sharp. That one stayed with me because it was oddly intimate, not inappropriate on its own, just familiar, too familiar. Still, I said nothing. Because adults have coworkers. Because marriages survive contact with other attractive, competent people every day. Because I did not want to become the paranoid wife inventing betrayal from thin air. His family never gave me a reason to feel entirely secure either, though they were never openly hostile. They were the kind of people who valued appearances above truth. Daniel's mother, Patricia, had a gift for smiling while saying things that made you feel subtly evaluated. His father was quieter, more reserved, but he took his son's side in almost every disagreement by default. Not aggressively, just instinctively. I learned early that if something was uncomfortable, that family preferred to rename it rather than confront it. Tension became stress. Distance became a busy season. Cruelty became miscommunication. So when Daniel became more distracted over the past month, I told myself not to overreact. I told myself marriages had seasons. I told myself intimacy changes. I told myself adults get tired. But beneath all those reasonable thoughts, something older and quieter kept whispering, "Pay attention," because he was changing in ways that had texture, not just behavior, energy. He started coming home later, buying better shirts, checking his reflection when he thought no one was looking. He became strangely protective of his phone, while also acting performatively casual about everything else. And worst of all, he stopped being curious about me. That was the part I couldn't name at first. He still asked the surface questions. How was work? Did you eat? What time is your meeting tomorrow? But he no longer listened to the answers. It was like his body remained in the marriage, while his attention had migrated somewhere else, to someone else. And I think deep down, I knew before I admitted it. I knew in the way women often know things long before we allow ourselves the dignity of certainty. Not because we are irrational, but because we notice. We notice pauses. We notice tone. We notice when affection becomes performance. We notice when a man starts giving the best parts of himself to someone outside the home and leaves only habit behind for the woman waiting inside it. By the time that Wednesday text arrived, something in me was already standing at the edge of the truth. I just didn't yet realize that by the end of the night, I would be staring directly into it. The strange thing about suspicion is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It grows quietly, like a crack in glass that starts small enough to ignore, until one day you realize the entire surface is fractured. After that Wednesday night, I didn't confront Daniel. Not immediately, and that wasn't weakness. It was instinct. Because part of my job, part of who I am, is knowing that the truth reveals itself best when you don't interrupt it too early. So instead of reacting, I observed. Thursday morning, I woke up to cold sheets. Daniel was already gone. No kiss goodbye. No coffee left on the counter like he used to do. Just a note. Emergency meeting. Back tonight. Love you. Love you. 2 words that suddenly felt like a habit instead of a meaning. I stood in the kitchen holding that note and something about it felt staged, too convenient, too neat. Because Daniel's company didn't operate like that. Not in emergencies, not in the middle of the week, and certainly not without prior discussion. I didn't rush, I didn't panic. I made coffee, sat down, opened my laptop, and started verifying. The first thing I did was call his office, not as myself. I knew better than that. "Good morning," I said calmly when the receptionist answered. "This is Dr. Wynn's office. I'm confirming an appointment for Mr. Daniel Carter today. He mentioned a possible conflict with work." A brief pause. Typing sounds. Then, "I'm sorry, but Mr. Carter called in sick this morning. He's not in today." I thanked her and hung up. And just like that, one lie became two. He wasn't in an emergency meeting. He wasn't at work. He was somewhere else. And suddenly, that crack in the glass widened. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel shocked anymore, because confirmation doesn't always hurt. Sometimes it just removes doubt. I spent the rest of the morning in silence, thinking, replaying, reevaluating everything I had dismissed over the past month. And the more I thought, the clearer the pattern became. Late arrivals, unexplained schedule changes, more attention to his appearance, more distance toward me, more mentions of Rachel. Always Rachel. And now, lies that required effort, coordination, planning. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't confusion. This was deliberate behavior. I drove out around noon. Not to follow him. Not yet, but to confirm something else. I went to Rosario's, the same place his phone had been the night before. The restaurant was quieter during lunch hours. The kind of place where conversations echo softly, and every detail feels deliberate. I approached the hostess with a polite smile. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice light. "I think my husband might have left something here last night. He was here around 7? Dinner for 2? Her face lit up with recognition almost immediately. And in that moment, my stomach dropped. Because recognition means memory. And memory means it wasn't just a quick visit. "Oh yes," she said warmly. "I remember them. They were lovely." Them, not him. Not a man dining alone. A couple. I kept my expression steady. "Do you happen to remember where they sat?" "By the window," she replied. It was very romantic. They seemed really happy. Romantic. Happy. The words landed softly, but cut deep. I nodded slowly. "Did they stay long?" "Until about 8:30, she said. "They ordered our anniversary special." Anniversary. I almost smiled at the irony. 9 years of marriage. And my husband was celebrating something with another woman in a place that specialized in pretending moments mattered. "Anything else?" I asked gently. She hesitated for a second, then smiled again. "Well, the gentleman gave her something, a small box. She got emotional. It was very sweet." A small box. My fingers curled slightly at my sides. "Jewelry." "Of course." I thanked her, turned, and walked out before my composure slipped. The air outside felt sharper, colder, more real. I sat in my car for a long moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes unfocused. He bought her something. He made her emotional. He took her to a place designed for intimacy. And then he came home and lied to my face. Calmly, confidently, like it was easy. Like I was easy to deceive. That realization didn't make me angry. Not yet. It made me precise. Because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was a system, a pattern. And patterns can be traced. I went home, straight to the bedroom. And for the first time in 9 years, I searched through my husband's things, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to understand how far this had gone. His gym bag was exactly where he left it, carelessly, as if he never imagined I would look. Inside, in a small zippered pocket, I found it, wrapped in tissue, a silver bracelet, delicate, expensive, engraved, always yours, R. Not subtle. Not ambiguous, not a misunderstanding. A declaration. I took a photo. Several, actually. Different angles. Clear lighting. Then I placed it back exactly as I found it. Because evidence only matters if it remains undiscovered. Next, his laptop. Unlocked. Careless again. Or maybe he just didn't think I would ever cross that line. Guilt has a strange way of making people sloppy. I opened his email. And I didn't have to search long, because he hadn't hidden it well. There were dozens of messages. Weeks worth. At first, professional. Work-related. Neutral. But slowly, they changed. Thanks for listening today. You really understand me. I don't think I've felt this seen in a long time. Lunch tomorrow? These conversations are the best part of my day. Then, more personal. More intimate. You notice things my wife doesn't anymore. I feel like I can breathe around you. Yesterday was perfect. And then the ones that removed all doubt. Last night meant everything to me. We need to be careful. She's starting to notice. I love you. I stopped reading for a moment, not because I couldn't continue, but because I needed to feel what that sentence actually meant. He loved her. He told her that while coming home to me, while sleeping next to me, while maintaining a life built on promises he clearly no longer respected. I took screenshots, every message, every timestamp, every word, and sent them to a secure folder, methodically, without rushing. Because this wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about truth. And truth requires structure. The final message was from that morning. Can't meet today. She's acting strange. Need to lay low. Miss you already. I stared at that sentence longer than anything else. She's acting strange. Not I feel guilty. Not we should stop. Just strategy. Avoidance. Adaptation. Like I was a problem to manage, not a person to respect. I closed the laptop slowly, sat back, and exhaled. So this was the reality. Not suspicion. Not insecurity. Not imagination. Reality. My husband was having an affair. Not impulsive. Not accidental. Structured. Repeated. Emotional. Physical. And carefully hidden. And the most dangerous part, he believed he was doing it well. He believed I wouldn't see it, wouldn't question it, wouldn't piece it together. But he forgot one thing. I don't ignore patterns. I study them. And now I had enough pieces to understand exactly what kind of game he was playing. The only question left was how far he was willing to take it and how far I was willing to let him go before I ended it. By Friday morning, I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. Not just the fact of the affair, but the structure of it, the rhythm, the routine, the lies layered carefully over something he thought I would never trace. But knowledge and confrontation are not the same thing, and I wasn't ready to confront him yet, not without seeing it with my own eyes, not without removing every possible excuse he could use to twist the truth. So I created a situation, simple, controlled, impossible to escape. He was in the shower when I walked into the kitchen and said casually, "Let's do something spontaneous tomorrow." His voice echoed from behind the bathroom door. Like what? Drive to the coast, I said. Walk on the beach. Dinner at that seafood place you love. There was a pause, then warmth. Genuine. Yeah, that actually sounds amazing. Of course it did. Because to him, Saturday was safe. Saturday was normal. Saturday had no Rachel in it. Perfect, I said lightly. But first, I want to stop by your office. I've never seen your new workspace since the remodel. Silence. Not long, but enough. Why? He asked. I leaned against the counter, watching the steam curl under the bathroom door. I'm curious, I said. You spend so much time there. I want to see where you work, meet some people. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, they're pretty strict about visitors. I smiled to myself. During work hours, I doubt it. We'll see, he said, voice tighter now. That was the first crack. Small, but real. Saturday came, and I watched him carefully from the moment he woke up. He was slightly off, not enough for someone else to notice, but I did. He checked his phone more than usual, avoided eye contact just a second too long, moved slower. like someone mentally rehearsing. We got into the car around 10:15 a.m. The drive was quiet, not tense, just cautious. He kept glancing at me, like he was trying to figure out what I knew. I kept my expression neutral, calm, almost soft, because calm people are underestimated, and I needed him to underestimate me. We pulled into the company parking lot 20 minutes later, almost empty. Weekend staff only, maintenance vehicles, a handful of cars scattered like afterthoughts. Looks quiet, I said. Yeah, most people don't work weekends. His voice was steady, but his hands? They tightened slightly on the steering wheel. We walked toward the entrance, step by step. I could feel it, the tension building inside him. Not explosive, just tightening, like a wire being pulled too far. Maybe this isn't necessary, he said suddenly. I stopped. Turned to look at him. Why not? He swallowed. I just remembered. They changed some security policies. Spouses aren't allowed anymore. I tilted my head slightly. Really? Yeah. I gestured toward the glass doors, where a sign was clearly posted. Visiting hours, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Family members welcome with employee escort. I didn't even need to say anything. The sign spoke for me. He saw it. And in that moment, his last excuse collapsed. Let's go, I said softly. Inside, the security guard looked up. Recognition lit his face instantly. Mr. Carter, he said. Don't usually see you on weekends. Daniel forced a smile. Just stopping by quickly, the guard turned to me. And this must be your wife. I extended my hand. Emily. Nice to meet you, he said warmly. He talks about you sometimes. Sometimes. Interesting. I smiled politely. I've heard a lot about this place, I said, especially the Friday projects. The guard frowned slightly. Friday projects? I kept my eyes on Daniel. But ma'am, the guard continued, he doesn't work Fridays anymore. The world didn't explode. There was no dramatic music, no shouting, no scene, just silence. Heavy, absolute. I turned slowly toward Daniel. His face had gone completely pale. What do you mean? I asked the guard, my voice calm. He switched to a 4-day schedule months ago, the guard said. Monday through Thursday. Hasn't been in on a Friday since March. Right when the emails had changed. Right when Rachel had become more than a coworker. I nodded slowly. Thank you. The guard shifted uncomfortably, realizing he had stepped into something he didn't understand. We walked out. Back to the car. Neither of us spoke. Not on the walk. Not when we got inside. Not when he started the engine. The silence between us was no longer uncertain. It was definitive, because now there was nothing left to question. He wasn't just lying. He had built an entire second life inside the structure of our marriage. Fridays weren't work days. They were something else. Someone else. I watched the road ahead as we drove home, my hands resting calmly in my lap, my breathing steady. But inside, something had shifted permanently, not broken, not shattered, but clarified. Because doubt is exhausting, but certainty is sharp, and I finally had it. When we pulled into the driveway, I didn't move right away. Neither did he. The engine ticked softly as it cooled. And for a moment, we just sat there. Two people in the same car. Two completely different realities. Then I turned to him, looked directly into his eyes, and asked quietly, So, a pause. Measured. Controlled. Where have you really been going every Friday? His lips parted. But no words came out. And that silence was louder than any confession. The silence in the car didn't end when we walked inside. It followed us, clung to us, settled into the walls of the house like something heavy and permanent. I placed my keys on the kitchen counter with deliberate calm. The soft click echoed louder than it should have. Daniel stayed near the doorway, not moving, not speaking, just standing there, like a man waiting for impact. I turned to face him, fully. No distractions, no softness left, just clarity. You want to try again? I asked quietly. Or do you want to tell me the truth this time? His throat moved as he swallowed. I can explain. Of course he could. They always can. I folded my arms loosely, not defensive, just contained. Good, I said. Start with Friday. A long pause. I've been seeing someone, he said finally, not even looking at me. Seeing someone. Such a gentle phrase. Such a small sentence for something that destroys entire lives. I nodded once. I know. That made him look up. Shock flickered across his face. How? I followed you yesterday, I said evenly. Watched you walk into her building. Watched you leave. His lips parted again. I also went to Rosario's, I continued. Spoke to the hostess. She remembers you. Candlelight, anniversary special, jewelry. His shoulders sagged slightly. The performance was over, and I read your emails, I finished. That was the final piece. No more pretending, no more deflection, just truth. Or what passed for it. He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't want you to find out like this. There is no version of this where I would have preferred it. He exhaled shakily. It just happened. The line people use when they don't want to take ownership. I tilted my head slightly. 8 Fridays in a row? I asked softly. That's not something that just happens. That's a schedule. His face tightened. It wasn't planned like that. No, I said. Because from where I'm standing, it looks very organized. He didn't answer, so I stepped closer. Not aggressively, just enough to remove distance. When did it start? I asked. February, he said quietly. Emotionally or physically? Another pause. Emotionally first. Of course, that always comes first. The conversations, the sharing, the illusion of being understood. And physically? 3 weeks later. I let that settle. Let the timeline align with everything I had already seen. Every message, every late night, every shift. How many times? I asked. He hesitated. That told me everything. How many times, Daniel? Every Friday. 8 weeks. 8 deliberate choices. 8 separate opportunities to stop. 8 separate decisions not to. I nodded slowly. And the rest of the week? I asked. Nothing, he said quickly. Just texting, talking. Just. Such a dangerous word. Did you tell her you love her? Silence. Then, yes. It didn't hit me like a blow. It landed differently, quieter, deeper, like something sinking. Do you love her? I asked. I thought I did. Thought. Past tense. Convenient. And me? I love you. I let out a slow breath, then shook my head slightly. No, I said gently, you don't. His eyes snapped to mine. I do. People who love someone don't build a second life behind their back, I said, still calm. They don't lie every day. They don't look their partner in the eyes and choose someone else over and over again. I didn't choose her over you, he insisted. I held his gaze. You chose her every Friday. That shut him up. Because there was no argument against it, only silence and truth. He stepped closer now, desperation creeping in. I made a mistake. I almost laughed. But there was nothing funny about it. A mistake is forgetting something, I said. This was planning, repeating, maintaining. I didn't mean for it to go this far, but it did. I can end it, he said quickly. I will end it. Today. Right now. I studied his face. The urgency, the fear. Not of losing me, but of losing control of the situation. You think this is about her? I asked quietly. He blinked. It's not, he said. I shook my head. Rachel isn't the problem, I said. She's just where your choices led you. He didn't understand that yet. Most people don't. They think removing the other person fixes the damage. It doesn't. It just removes the evidence. What do you want me to do? He asked. Finally, the question that matters. Not excuses, not explanations, not emotional noise. Just, what now? I looked at him for a long moment. Really looked. At the man I married, and the man standing in front of me now. and the difference between them. Then I said the only thing that made sense. I want you to stop lying. I am, he said quickly. No, I replied softly. You're still doing it. Confusion crossed his face. How? By calling this a mistake, I said. By pretending it just happened. By acting like you didn't make conscious choices every step of the way. He went quiet again. Because deep down, he knew I was right. I need the truth, I said. Not the version that makes you look better. He swallowed. Then nodded slowly. I liked it, he admitted. There it was. Raw. Ugly. Honest. I liked the attention, he continued. The way she listened. The way she made everything feel exciting again. Exciting. Another word people use to justify destruction. And me? I asked. I didn't stop loving you, he said quickly. That's not what I asked. He hesitated. You became predictable, he said finally. That one landed. Not as pain, but as clarity. Predictable. Safe. Stable. Everything we had built. Everything that made a marriage work. Reduced to something boring. I nodded slowly. I see. He stepped closer again. Please, he said, we can fix this. People go through worse and come back from it. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a man who had broken something and was hoping it could be put back together without understanding what it actually cost. Fix what? I asked quietly. Our marriage. I let the silence stretch between us because sometimes the absence of an answer is the answer. Fix what? The question didn't just hang in the air. It exposed it. Everything. Because once something is broken at that level, you don't fix it. You assess the damage and decide whether it's worth rebuilding. Daniel didn't answer right away. He just stood there, searching my face, like there might still be a version of me willing to soften, to compromise, to stay. I can end it, he repeated. I'll quit my job if I have to. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. But only now. After 8 weeks of deliberate deception, after being caught, I walked past him slowly into the living room and sat down. Not because I was tired, but because I needed space to think without his energy pressing in on me. He followed. Of course he did. People like Daniel always follow when control starts slipping. I mean it, Emily, he said, voice tighter now. This doesn't have to be the end. I looked up at him. It already is, I said quietly. That was the first moment his composure cracked. You're not even willing to try? He asked, frustration rising. 9 years and you're just done? 9 years. He said it like I was the one throwing them away. I leaned back slightly. You ended it in February, I said. I'm just acknowledging it now. He ran his hands through his hair again, pacing now. This is exactly what I mean, he said. You shut down. You go cold. You don't even want to fight for us. Fight. Such a convenient word, as if this was a disagreement, not a betrayal. I'm not going to compete with another woman for my own marriage, I said evenly. You're not competing. I already lost that competition 8 Fridays in a row. That silenced him again, but only for a moment. Then came something else, something more dangerous. Deflection. You haven't exactly been easy to be with lately either, he said. There it was. The shift from guilt to justification. I watched him carefully. You want to try that angle? I asked softly. I'm just saying, he continued quickly, gaining momentum now that he'd found a narrative. Things between us haven't been great. You're always working. You're always tired. We barely talk anymore. I almost smiled. Because now he was following the script perfectly. The one I had already read about. The one I had already predicted. So instead of talking to me, I said calmly, you talked to her. She listened. And I didn't? You used to, he said. But lately, no, I cut in gently. Let's be precise. I didn't listen in the way that made you feel admired. That stopped him. Because that was the truth he didn't want to say out loud. She made me feel appreciated, he admitted quietly. I nodded. Of course she did. That's how it starts. Not with sex. Not with love. With validation. With attention. With someone new who hasn't seen your worst days yet. And he fell for it. Predictably. Almost textbook. You're acting like this is some kind of formula, he said, irritation creeping back in. It is, I replied simply. That frustrated him more because I wasn't emotional. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I was analyzing. And that made it harder for him to control the narrative. I'm still here, he said, almost desperately now. That has to count for something. I looked at him. And for a moment, I felt something close to sadness. Not for the marriage, but for how small he had made it. You're here because you got caught, I said. That landed hard. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Because he knew I wasn't wrong. That's when his phone buzzed. The sound cut through the room like a knife. He froze. So did I. We both looked at it. On the coffee table. Screen lighting up. A name. Rachel. Of course. Timing. Always timing. Don't answer it, I said calmly. I wasn't going to, he replied quickly. The phone buzzed again. Then again. Persistent. Desperate. I watched him. Not the phone. Him. Because this moment mattered more than anything he had said so far. Would he ignore her, or would he break again? Answer it, I said suddenly. He blinked. What? Put it on speaker. His face went pale. I don't think that's a good idea. I do. Silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, he picked up the phone, his hand trembling slightly. He answered. Hello? Her voice came through immediately. Soft. Familiar. Intimate. Hey, are you okay? You haven't responded. I got worried. Worried. I closed my eyes briefly, not in pain, in recognition. This was their dynamic. Care. Concern. Connection. The things that used to belong to us. I'm busy, he said, glancing at me. With her? She asked. Direct. No hesitation. Of course she knew, because secrets always feel smaller to the people inside them. Yes, he said quietly. A pause. Then, did you tell her? His grip tightened on the phone. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, I guess this was inevitable, she said softly. Not guilt. Not shame. Just acceptance. Like she had already processed this outcome. I'm sorry, Daniel said. To who? She asked. That question hit harder than anything else, because it exposed something neither of them had fully faced. Who exactly was he apologizing to? Me? Or her? I didn't mean for things to get complicated, he said. I almost laughed. Complicated. Another word people use when they don't want to say wrong. You don't have to explain, Rachel replied. I knew what this was. There it was. The truth. From the only person in the situation who wasn't pretending. I just thought, Daniel started. What? She said gently. That maybe it could be something real. Silence. Then, it was real, she said, just not permanent. And with that, she hung up. The line went dead. Daniel lowered the phone slowly, his face completely blank now, stripped of illusion, of justification, of narrative, because in less than 2 minutes, everything he thought he had built outside this marriage collapsed. And I sat there watching it happen, not with satisfaction, not with anger, but with a quiet, undeniable understanding. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about consequence. And for the first time, he was starting to feel it. After the call ended, the house felt hollow, not quiet, not peaceful, just empty. Daniel stood there, still holding his phone, staring at nothing, like someone who had just realized the story he told himself didn't exist anymore. Rachel was gone. Not dramatically. Not with accusations or tears, just gone. And somehow that made it worse, because there was nothing left for him to hide behind. No fantasy. No justification. No what if. just the reality of what he had done and what it had cost. He looked at me slowly. Emily. I didn't respond because for the first time since this began, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not sadness, something deeper, something heavier, something final. I stood up without saying a word and walked past him, up the stairs, into our bedroom, and that was when it hit me. Not as a sharp pain, not as a dramatic breakdown, but as a slow, crushing weight. Because this room, this space, was built on years of shared life, shared mornings, shared nights, shared routines that once felt permanent. And now, every inch of it felt contaminated. The bed, the dresser, the quiet familiarity of it all. It wasn't just that he had betrayed me. It was that he had done it while still living here, still sleeping next to me, still touching me, still saying goodnight like nothing had changed. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my hands resting in my lap, and for the first time, I let myself feel it. Not the facts, not the logic. The feeling. 9 years of trust, of consistency, of choosing each other over and over again. And somewhere along the way, he stopped choosing me without telling me, without giving me the dignity of knowing. He just replaced me, emotionally first, then physically, then completely. And I had been standing right next to him the entire time, believing we were still on the same side. That realization, that quiet humiliation, was the lowest point. Not because I felt small, but because I had allowed myself to trust someone who no longer deserved it. I heard his footsteps behind me, slow, careful, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to enter this space anymore. Emily, he said again, softer this time. I didn't turn around. Please talk to me. I let out a slow breath. What is there left to say? I asked quietly. We can still... No, I cut in gently. There was no anger in my voice, no sharpness, just certainty. We can't. He stepped closer. I know I messed up. You didn't mess up, I said. I turned to look at him. And this time, there was nothing left in my expression for him to read. No softness. No confusion, no hesitation. You made a series of decisions, I continued, over and over again, knowing exactly what you were doing. His face tightened. I said, I'm sorry. I know. But that doesn't change anything. He looked like he wanted to argue, to push, to convince me. But something in my tone stopped him, because apologies only work when something is still salvageable. And this wasn't. I ended it. He said suddenly. You heard it. It's over. I nodded. I know. Then why does it feel like you're already gone? He asked, frustration breaking through. Because I was. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. You didn't lose me today, I said softly. You lost me the moment you decided I wasn't enough to be honest with. That landed deep. Because it wasn't about Rachel. It was never just about Rachel. It was about respect, about integrity, about the foundation of everything we built. And he broke that long before I ever found out. He sat down across from me, head in his hands. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted. I watched him for a moment, and for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to help him, to guide him, to stabilize the situation. That instinct, the one that had held our life together for years, was gone. Because I finally understood something important. It was never my responsibility to fix what he chose to destroy. I don't think you can, I said quietly. Silence, heavy, unavoidable. Then, in a smaller voice, what happens now? I looked around the room one last time, at the life we built, at the version of myself that had existed inside this marriage. And I realized something that felt both painful and freeing at the same time. That version of me was gone. Not broken. Not ruined. Just finished. I stood up, walked to the closet, opened the door, and for a moment, I just stood there, looking at the clothes, the shared space, the quiet evidence of a life that no longer made sense. Then I turned back to him and finally said it. Now, A pause. Steady. Unshakable. You move out. He looked up sharply. What? I want you out of this house, I said. The words didn't come from anger. They came from clarity, from self-respect, from understanding exactly what I deserved and what I would no longer tolerate. Emily, wait. No, I said calmly. I've waited long enough. He stood up quickly. We can figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. Don't do this, he said, desperation rising now. Please. I held his gaze, unmoved. You already did. And that was it. That was the moment everything ended. Not with shouting, not with chaos, but with a quiet, irreversible decision. Because sometimes the deepest breaking point isn't loud. It's silent. It's the moment you stop hoping things will change and start accepting that they won't. The moment I told him to leave, something inside me settled. Not instantly, not completely, but enough. Enough to think clearly, enough to stop reacting and start deciding. Daniel didn't argue the way I expected. He didn't shout, didn't slam doors, didn't try to turn it into a dramatic fight. Instead, he just stood there, like someone who had finally run out of versions of the story that made him look better. Tonight? He asked quietly. Yes. His jaw tightened. Where am I supposed to go? That question would have broken me before, made me hesitate, made me soften. But now, it didn't move me at all. That's not my responsibility anymore, I said calmly. The words surprised even me, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. For years, I had been the one who managed everything, smoothed things over, fixed problems before they escalated, made life easier for both of us. But this wasn't something I created, so it wasn't something I had to solve. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Because the woman standing in front of him now was no longer willing to carry him through the consequences of his own choices. Can we at least talk about this? He tried again. We already did. No, I mean really talk about what went wrong, how we got here. I shook my head slightly. That conversation should have happened before you started lying, I said. Not after you got caught. That ended it. For real this time, because there was no more space left for negotiation, no more emotional leverage, no more illusion that this was something we could work through together. This was something he had done, and now it was something he had to face alone. He packed that afternoon, quietly. No dramatic gestures, no last-minute declarations, just movement. Drawers opening, closet doors sliding, suitcases filling. I stayed downstairs, not to avoid him, but because I didn't need to watch. The life we had built together was already over. Watching it physically dismantle wouldn't change anything. At one point, he came down holding a shirt. "This one's yours, right?" he asked. I glanced at it. A soft blue button-down I used to wear around the house on weekends. He had borrowed it once, years ago, and never gave it back. "Keep it," I said. He nodded slowly. Set it in his suitcase anyway. Old habits. Holding on to things that didn't belong to him. By early evening, everything was ready. 2 suitcases by the door. A backpack slung over his shoulder. The house looked the same and completely different at the same time. He stood there for a moment, like he was waiting for something. A final word. A change of heart. A crack in my resolve. But there wasn't one. "Emily," he said softly. I looked up from the kitchen table. "Yes?" "I really did love you." Past tense. I noticed it immediately. "Of course I did." I nodded once. "I know." That seemed to surprise him. "I'm not saying it to hurt you," he added quickly. "I know that too." Silence. Then, "I wish I hadn't." "I know," I interrupted gently, because I didn't need to hear the rest. Regret is always clearer after consequence, but it doesn't undo anything. He picked up his bags, walked to the door, then paused, just for a second, like he was standing at the edge of something he couldn't step back from, and then he left. No slammed door, no final argument, just the quiet click of it closing behind him. And that was it. 9 years ended in silence. I stood there for a long time after he was gone, not moving, not thinking, just existing in the space that was finally mine again. The house felt different, lighter, not happy. Not yet, but no longer heavy with something unspoken. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to go wrong, because it already had. And I had already responded. I walked through the house slowly, room by room, not looking for him, just noticing the absence. His shoes by the door, gone. His jacket, gone. His presence, gone. And instead of emptiness, there was space. That was the first shift. Small, but powerful, because space means possibility. I went upstairs into the bedroom and opened my phone. Scrolled through the evidence I had collected, the messages, the photos, the timeline, everything. And for a moment, I saw it all clearly, not as pain, but as proof. Proof of what he did, proof of what I endured, proof that I wasn't imagining anything, that I hadn't overreacted, that I had seen the truth and acted on it. That mattered more than I expected. Because clarity doesn't just end something. It protects you from questioning yourself later, from wondering if you made the wrong decision, from rewriting history to make it less painful. I closed the folder, locked it, and then I made the call. Thompson and Associates, the receptionist answered. Hi, I said calmly. I need to schedule a consultation for divorce proceedings. A brief pause. Of course. What's the general situation? I didn't hesitate. Infidelity. I have extensive evidence. That word, infidelity, felt strange in my mouth. Clinical. Detached. But accurate. Can you come in Monday at 10 a.m., she asked. I'll be there. I ended the call, set my phone down, and exhaled. Not shakily, not emotionally, just steadily. Because this was the turning point. Not when I found out, not when I confronted him, but now, when I chose myself. When I stopped asking what he wanted, stopped asking what we could fix, stopped asking if it was salvageable, and started asking a different question. What do I deserve? And the answer was simple. More than this. Sunday morning arrived quietly. No tension, no uncertainty, just clarity. I woke up earlier than usual, not because I couldn't sleep, but because my mind was finally still enough to move forward. For the first time in weeks, I didn't check my phone wondering where Daniel was. I didn't listen for his footsteps. I didn't wait for an explanation that would never make sense. There was nothing left to wait for. So I got up, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and started taking control of my life again. The first call I made was to the bank. Good morning, I said calmly. I need to place an immediate restriction on my joint accounts. Divorce proceedings. The woman on the other end shifted into professional efficiency instantly. Of course, ma'am. Do you have documentation? Yes, I replied. Full evidence of infidelity. A pause. Then, we can place a temporary hold requiring dual authorization for any withdrawals. You'll need to come in Monday to finalize account separation. Perfect. No drama. No hesitation, just action. Because finances aren't emotional. They're structural, and I wasn't going to let my future be affected by his past decisions. The second call was to my lawyer. Thompson speaking. This is Emily Carter. We have an appointment Monday. I'd like to expedite everything. What changed? He asked. He confessed, I said simply. Full admission. I have recordings, messages, everything. There was a pause. Then, that simplifies things significantly, he said. We can move fast. Good. I wasn't interested in dragging this out. I didn't want prolonged arguments or negotiations built on broken trust. I wanted resolution. Clean. Final. The third call was harder. His parents. Patricia answered. Emily? Her voice already carried concern. Of course it did, because somewhere between last night and this morning, Daniel had told them something. Probably a version of the truth, filtered, softened. "I thought you should hear it from me," I said calmly. And then I told her everything. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just facts. The affair, the lies, the timeline, the decision. Silence followed, long, heavy. Then, "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," I replied. Another pause. Then his father's voice came through, deeper, more controlled. "I'm sorry." Simple, direct, and for the first time, honest. "She wasn't raised to do this," he added. I held the phone a little tighter. "I know," I said, "but she did." No excuses, no deflection, just truth. "What can we do?" Patricia asked softly. "Be there for her," I said. "She's going to need it." "And you?" I looked around the kitchen, at the quiet, at the order, at the life I was already rebuilding. "I'll be fine." And I meant it. By the time Daniel came back that afternoon, it wasn't to argue. It wasn't to negotiate. It was to collect the last of his things. He looked different. Not physically, but diminished. Like someone who had lost more than he expected. His confidence, his control, his illusion of choice. He stepped into the house carefully, like it no longer belonged to him. And it didn't. "Hi," he said quietly. I nodded once. "Your things are upstairs." He hesitated. Then, "Can we talk?" I looked at him. Not cold, not angry, just done. "There's nothing left to say." He swallowed. "I didn't go to her," he said suddenly. That caught my attention, just slightly. "After yesterday," he continued, "I called her. She doesn't want anything serious." Of course she didn't. I had already seen that coming. Men like Daniel don't leave marriages for women like Rachel. They escape into them. And women like Rachel, they don't always want the reality that comes after. "She said it was complicated," he added. I almost smiled. "Was it?" I asked. He looked down. "I thought it was real." "It was real," I said. "Just not what you thought it was." That landed, because reality always does. "What am I supposed to do now?" he asked quietly. That question again, still looking for direction, still expecting someone else to solve it. "Live with your choices," I said. No softness, no cruelty, just truth. He nodded slowly, like he finally understood, or at least stopped trying to avoid it. That evening, I sat alone in the living room. No noise, no distraction, just stillness. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful because everything false had been removed. No more lies, no more suspicion, no more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Just reality. And reality, even when it hurts, is always better than illusion. 6 months later, everything was different. The divorce finalized quickly. No long battles. No complicated disputes. The evidence had been too clear. The confession too complete. There was nothing left to argue. I kept the house. Of course I did. It had always been mine, legally. But now, it felt like mine emotionally too. I repainted the bedroom, changed the furniture, turned his old office into a workspace that actually reflected who I was. Piece by piece, I removed and replaced it with things that did. Work improved. Without distraction, without emotional weight pulling me down, I focused. Delivered, grew. I took on new clients, negotiated better deals, earned more than I had in years. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because I finally had the space to be fully present. And personally, I changed too. Not in a dramatic, external way, but internally, subtly. Permanently. I stopped ignoring red flags, stopped making excuses for behavior that didn't align with respect, stopped shrinking myself to maintain peace, and started choosing carefully. intentionally, without compromise. One evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Can we talk? Please, it's important. I knew who it was. Of course I did. She had tried before. Different numbers, different emails, blocked, ignored, all of them. But this time, I paused, just for a second, then replied, "What do you want?" Her response came immediately, to apologize, to explain. I stared at the screen, then typed back, "There's nothing to explain." A pause. Then, "He left me. I have nowhere to go." I read that message twice, not because it affected me, but because it confirmed everything I already knew. He wasn't her future. He was her mistake, just like she had been his. "Not my problem," I replied. "Please, I made a mistake." I held the phone for a moment longer, then typed the only response that mattered. "You made a choice. Live with it," and blocked the number. No anger, no satisfaction, just closure, because consequences don't need witnesses. They happen anyway. 6 months ago, I thought losing my marriage would break me. I thought betrayal would feel like something loud, explosive, something that shattered everything all at once. But it didn't. It happened quietly, in small moments, in realizations, in the slow understanding that the life I thought I had was no longer real. And the strangest part? The ending wasn't the most painful part. The clarity was, because once you see the truth clearly, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. You can't convince yourself things will somehow fix themselves. You either accept it or you stay trapped in something that's already gone. And I chose to accept it. Today, my life looks different. Not perfect, not effortless, but honest. And that matters more than anything. I wake up in a house that feels like mine again, not shared, not compromised, not quietly shaped around someone else's decisions. Mine. I make coffee without wondering who I'm sharing it with. I go to work without the weight of unanswered questions sitting in the back of my mind. I come home without checking a location, a message, a tone of voice. There is no confusion, no doubt, no second guessing, just peace. And peace is something I didn't realize I was missing until it came back. A few weeks ago, I went on a simple coffee date. Nothing dramatic. No expectations. Just a conversation with someone new, someone kind, present, genuinely interested in what I had to say, not just waiting for their turn to speak. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't compare. I didn't analyze. I didn't look for hidden meaning behind every word. Because when something is honest, you don't have to search for proof. It just feels right. That doesn't mean I've forgotten what happened. I haven't, and I won't. Because forgetting isn't healing. Understanding is. And what I understand now is this. Love is not just how someone feels about you. It's how they choose you every day. In small ways, in difficult moments, in opportunities to lie or to tell the truth. Daniel didn't stop loving me in one moment. He stopped choosing me, gradually, quietly, until there was nothing left to hold on to. And that wasn't my failure. It was his. If there's one thing I would tell anyone watching this, it's this. Pay attention to patterns, not words, not promises, not apologies, patterns. Because people can say anything. They can sound convincing. They can look sincere. But patterns don't lie. They show you exactly where someone's priorities are, exactly where their loyalty goes, exactly who they are when no one is forcing them to be better. I used to think strength meant holding on, fighting for something, refusing to give up. But now I know. Sometimes strength looks different. Sometimes it's walking away without screaming, without revenge, without needing the other person to understand what they lost. Because your value doesn't depend on whether they recognize it. It never did. The man who betrayed me, he's no longer part of my life. Not emotionally, not mentally, not even as a question. He became exactly what he should have been all along. A lesson. And nothing more. And me? I'm not the woman who was left behind. I'm the woman who chose herself when it mattered most. And that choice, that quiet, steady decision, changed everything. Because the best response to betrayal is not anger. It's not revenge. It's not proving anything to the person who broke you. It's this: living well, living clearly, and never settling for less than the truth again.